Hi, this is Janet Swerdlow for Expansions.com, and this is our news podcast for the second week in May, flying right along. Anyway, I want to start you off with some very interesting news as always and my take on it so that you can follow along the show that the media is putting on for you and you can understand what they're actually doing versus what they're just telling you and calling it fake news, because technically it's always all been fake news. It's a show. So let's see what they're playing for you this last week and going into this week. By now you might have heard of Butler University's Trumpism course, right close to me in Michigan, down in Indiana. Apparently they have a fall 27 course called Trumpism and U.S. Democracy. And the course description received attention after it characterized the president as, quote, perpetuating sexism, white supremacy, xenophobia, nationalism, nativism, and imperialism. That description has since been removed. However, because some of these terms I wasn't real familiar with, I thought just out of curiosity I would look these up for you. So apparently, nativism is a policy of favoring native inhabitants as opposed to immigrants. And then they talked about the revival or perpetuation of an indigenous culture, especially in opposition to acculturation. So I didn't know what acculturation meant. And that is about a group of people adapting to or borrowing traits from another culture, and a merging of cultures as a result of prolonged contact. Then I looked up xenophobia, which is the fear and distrust of that which is perceived to be foreign or strange, especially like immigrants, and imperialism, which historically means that it's ruled by an emperor, which I've been talking to you about this new Trump, what I would call dynasty, that is in the making. Anyway, the description's been removed, the Butler University has made its apologies, blah blah, but in the meantime, of course, it's all over the news, and that's what they want, is for you to be exposed to all of this. And believe it or not, which I believe it, enrollment for the class was full. Okay, and then the French election is ongoing. Hopefully we will know the outcome of that soon. And I told you last week about Emmanuel Macron, which I think is going to be the leader simply because of his first name, Emmanuel, which also means Jesus. And then remember what I also told you last time, that when he was 15, he met his wife, who was 39 at the time. She divorced her husband and father of her 3 children, and she's 24 years the senior of this guy who's leading now. So in my opinion, Emmanuel most likely is going to win. And remember what I told you before, that France is more Egyptian than Egypt. So there's a lot of symbolism in Paris. Remember Par, Isis. So a lot of things that are going on. If you know our work, you will know that already. And of course, if you don't know our work, then you want to read Blue Blood, True Blood, Conflict and Creation. And I read you some of this a few weeks ago about the hunting games that Stewart wrote about in 2002, long before Dr. Phil talked about it. And then True World History, which also has some very interesting information if you're interested in knowing what's really going on out there. And of course, our September Spectacular, we will be bringing you up to date on more information along these lines. So anyway, I think Emmanuel Macron is going to win for a variety of reasons. And of course, because he was 15, the wife is 39. Again, in my opinion, pedophilia. But now that they're older, they're not going to exactly say that to you, but that's kind of, in my opinion, the frequency that is behind his election. So a lot of hidden layers here. And then moving along back here to the U.S., Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, wants to use the $14 billion seized from the Mexican drug lord El Chapo to pay for Trump's border wall. Now, who can argue with that, right? Rocker Ted Nugent says the idea is, quote, absolutely bulletproof. Now that was kind of interesting to start with, but as we move along here, the guitarist apparently, along with fellow rocker Kid Rock and former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, met with President Trump at the White House for dinner. And during the dinner, Trump reassured the group that he was a constitutionally driven commander-in-chief, unquote. Now, these are the stories I don't understand. Why is the guitarist weighing in on this situation? Who cares what rocker Kid Rock, I don't even know his real name, Who cares about that? And then we have former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin. Again, who cares what they think? And why are they meeting with Trump? And why is this all over the media? So then I will tell you that in my opinion, the wall, if it is built, which it won't surprise me if they don't start the thing, that the wall, in my opinion, is designed to keep the U.S. citizens in rather than the immigrants out. And they focus you on what they want you to see versus what is. So if you're not following along on my blog this month, I'm talking about focus on success. Well, they are very successfully hoodwinking you, and that is an Illuminati term, which if you know our work, you know what that means by now. Moving along to Pope Francis. So when Stewart was here in his last podcast, he was telling you about the Moab bomb that was used in Syria. So anyway, we discussed it, so you'll have to go back and read that. But it's basically, it stands for the Massive Ordnance Air Blast. Pope Francis, however, said that he was ashamed that the word mother was tied to Moab, which mother of all bombs. And of course, that's also a biblical term, which we explained to you. Anyway, the Pope said to a group of students that a mother gives life, this one gives death. We call this device a mother. What is happening? So again, remember, New World religion, blending what you don't think should be blended, violence, death, mother, all of this is going to be continuing to come out in the open. And of course, if Pope Francis says that, then hey, it's got to be okay, right? And I also reported to you that Trump was going to be in Europe the end of the month, and it was not decided yet if he was going to meet with Pope Francis. However, now they are saying that he will meet with the Pope on May 24th. Then the other story that I'm following up on is Aaron Hernandez's suicide. Now, originally, they said there were no suicide notes when I first reported this story, and I told you I didn't think it was suicide. I think it's a ritual killing. And then, of course, the more that they reveal about this, the more I agree with my first assessment of the situation. Now they're saying that there were 3 suicide notes left to his family members, and these were left next to a copy of the Bible, which was open to the verse John 3:16, which he supposedly somehow had written on his forehead in red ink. Now, Aaron Hernandez was 27 years old. He was serving a life sentence at a Massachusetts correctional facility for the murder of his former friend, Odin Lloyd. Now, I haven't really talked about this too much, but this has been on my mind because my podcasts have been very long. I've had a lot of information to give to you, but I did want you to remind you that Odin is the god of war and death. He's also the sky god, the god of wisdom, poetry, the all-father of all Nordic gods, and he, believe it or not, is heavily associated with magic. Now, Lloyd, I also looked up that last name, and it is also of Welsh origin, and it can mean gray or brown. Gray is confusion. Brown in hyperspace language means bringing something into the present. So it's very significant that Odin Lloyd is the center of this murder that Aaron Hernandez is a part of. And Aaron, as you know, is also a biblical name. Now, also, originally, Aaron Hernandez was, or I should say additionally, charged with a double murder, twinning, which I've been talking to you about in these last few podcasts and how important that is to the global elite / Illuminati. And they say that he did not appear to have thoughts of suicide in the days before he killed himself in his prison. Now, originally they said that he had smoked synthetic marijuana before they found him hanged, but the drug reports are saying there were no drugs in his system, including no synthetic marijuana. And they also said that he made phone calls before his death, and they reviewed 5 of the phone calls, and they said that it did not indicate any apparent intention to harm himself during any of the phone calls. Then, let's see, it goes on to say, listen to this one, that Aaron Hernandez's suicide is depicting Jesus Christ. Apparently, before he hung himself with a prison bedsheet, he cut his right middle finger and drew blood circles on each of the bottom of his feet, which they claim are consistent with images of the feet of Jesus Christ. Okay, remember again, he had John 3:16 on his forehead. It declares that it's a scriptural verse that declares eternal life for all, even the most wicked, as long as they believe God sent his son to perish for them. Then they also remember, and they don't talk about it in this article, but I reminded you about this before, that he drew symbols on his wall of his cell in blood of the all-seeing Illuminati eye, of pyramids not quite completed, And then, let's see, now it said, this was interesting too, because his attorney originally did not think it was suicide. However, they said after initially declaring skepticism that Hernandez took his own life, his family has lately remained silent on the cause of death. Or maybe they were threatened, which is absolutely possible. Anyway, it goes on to detail a little bit more about his supposedly suicide. That the correction officer, well, first of all, he made all these phone calls at about 8 o'clock on the evening of April 18th. So 5 phone calls, no indication he was suicidal. The correction officers observed him during a routine 1 a.m. bed check on April 19th. Then 2 hours later, approximately 3:03, 3 plus 3, 33 is an Illuminati number as well as it's a 6, which is an ending. When the officer on duty came to his cell, there was a bed sheet covering the door. So he couldn't see inside. He called into the cell, Hernandez didn't answer, and so he poked the sheet, it fell down, and he saw Hernandez hanging naked from a cut-up bed sheet tied to a bar on a window. I still don't know how he could tie it from a bar on a window and hang himself. So I don't know, unless it's really, really up high. I don't understand all of that. But anyway, I wasn't there, and they're not showing you and telling you everything, obviously. So this officer used life-saving measures, but they still declared him dead an hour later at the hospital. Now, apparently, not only had he pegged cardboard, which was shoved into the door tracks to prevent the door from opening, but he also put a large amount of shampoo on the floor, which made it very slippery. But then they said that he still rushed, because so the officers couldn't get him down. But they still got him down. They still performed life-saving measures if they could. They found the suicide notes, which originally they told us that there weren't any of it. So none of it still makes any sense to me, and I still think that there are very suspicious incidents surrounding his death, and I still don't believe it was suicide. Anyway, moving on to death and destruction. Facebook Live. There was a Georgia teen who attempted suicide on Facebook. People watching it called the law enforcement officers, and within 30 minutes they were at her home. And by the time they got there, this girl had taken pills, placed a plastic bag over her head before she was reached, but they managed to save her, and so live stream, I guess, saves the day. Now, this follows up the incident I told you about in the last couple of weeks about the Thailand man killing his daughter live on Facebook. Then, of course, he committed suicide. And then there was an elderly man, God win, killing God, and so God doesn't win. In Cleveland, Ohio, the sexual assault of a Chicago teenager streamed live online in March. And Facebook, of course, now saying that they have hired 3,000 additional workers to help monitor the content. So now they've saved somebody. So that means we need Facebook live stream, right? Because we saved somebody. Now, back in December of 2016, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, here in the U.S., there was also a video of an alleged rape near the University of Wisconsin, which was posted online. And they don't say this was Facebook Live, but I'm still putting this one in here along with all of it. Oh yeah, it is posted on Facebook, but just not live, I guess. Anyway, the video shows that this woman was assaulted. She was naked and incoherent with the suspect. She was a 20-year-old woman who was attending a party. And apparently the sexual assault occurred by a 20-year-old man. Now, Michael Adams. Michael is a programming name. Adam, think about that from the Bible, of course. Anyway, Adams allegedly touched her inappropriately, but the two did have sex, and that Adams said, just because you can't remember doesn't mean you scream rape. Apparently she didn't even know that this had happened, and when a friend of hers told her she had seen it on Facebook, that's when the incident all kind of blew up in everybody's face. Now, at the party, they claimed that Adams squirted 2 eyedroppers filled with a liquid form of Xanax into her mouth upon her request. Then around 3 a.m., another witness observed the victim in the bathtub with Adams. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't moving or responding to questions. So why didn't they get help for her? So what I'm going to tell you is this. Don't put yourself in jeopardy. None of it is right, but that, you know, people are putting themselves in these situations that things can happen. Don't do this to yourself. This is ridiculous.